Stanley the Cat by Slicer 945.
Drika!
This is a story of the making of a story, in which the story being written is that of which the story is written about. Now, this is a story of the making of a story, in which the story being written is that of which the story is written about. Begins with a humble cat in humble lodgings. This cat's name was Stanley. Stanley was a regular house cat living within the treehouse of a peaceful man. Life was good for Stanley. He was given fresh fish daily and was never alone with the company of 4 other cats. However, Stanley never felt truly alive in his lodgings. He was never allowed to go outside, and with the place being a treehouse, there was no safe way for him to escape. Many years passed, and Stanley, after many attempts to be free, finally gave up altogether. But fate is a mysterious force, and not all can stay the same forever. Stanley, during his afternoon nap, was rudely awoken to the crackling of fire and the shouting of his owner. All around him was fire, the floor, the walls, even the tough trunk that held up the house. Snap! The house started to tilt as chests and tables slid across the floor. Stanley barely dodging them. Suddenly the trunk snaps in two and the tree house toppled into the ground. Stanley opened his eyes. His whole body ached, bruised and burned, yet alive. Stanley stood up and looked around. Ash littered the ground along with the fried carcass of the tree that once supported his home, his prison. Stanley realized he was free. No longer was he trapped in that house. No longer was he to sit and to sleep, lounge around all day. Stanley was a free cat. Stanley bounded away from the wreckage, away from his past self. Stanley was a new cat. For weeks afterwards, Stanley quickly adapted to fishing in the rivers, using his paws to scoop up the salmon as they swam past, claimed his territory against other cats, and found a mate to form a family. Stanley was content. However, a horrible disaster. He was out hunting and returned to find his beloved mate slain by wolves. Stanley, filled with anger and grief, followed the trail left by the perpetrators and found a wolf nest. Stanley charged out recklessly and fought the wolves, fueled by endless rage. He fought tooth and claw, but the odds were against him, and he was badly wounded. He ran as fast as he could as the wolves chased him. He ran for miles until the pursuers gave up the chase. Stanley, wounded and grieving, walked endlessly. Walked until his paws gave way and his sadness took over. He curled into a ball and cried himself to sleep. He woke to a grumbling stomach. Getting to his feet, he staggered to a nearby river and stared into the rushing waters. Crack! A twig snapped behind him, and a human stepped out from the bush. Stanley raised his beaten tail and let out a pitiful growl. The human calmly reached into his bag and produced a fish and offered it to Stanley. Stanley had already concluded that jungle life was not for him, as he trudged towards the human and nibbled on the fish. The human softly said, "Hello, kitty. Why don't you come live with me?" Stanley followed his new master and lived in his new home, never forgetting his old life, never forgetting the wild adventures and the tragedies that follow. Stanley lived on until old age took hold. He lived on until death's bell tolled.
Bravo.